Every bride dreams of her perfect wedding day. Mine was supposed to be a garden ceremony at sunset, surrounded by roses and fairy lights, celebrating my love for Daniel with our closest family and friends. Instead, it became the day my mother-in-law, Margaret, revealed herself as the manipulative narcissist she truly was, and set in motion events that would eventually tear her carefully crafted world apart. The morning started perfectly. The late September weather was ideal, sunny but not too warm. My bridesmaids and I got ready in the bridal suite of the Golden Rose Hotel, sharing champagne and laughter as the makeup artist worked her magic. Even the usual pre-wedding jitters couldn't dampen my happiness. "You look absolutely beautiful, Sophie," my best friend and maid of honor, Rachel, said as she helped adjust my veil. The vintage lace dress had been my grandmother's, carefully altered to fit me perfectly. I felt like a princess. Then Margaret arrived. "Oh dear," she said, eyeing my dress critically. "That's very traditional. I suppose it's sweet that you wanted to save money by wearing a hand-me-down." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that in just a few hours, she would officially be my mother-in-law. Daniel was worth dealing with her occasional barbs. Besides, he promised we'd maintain healthy boundaries after the wedding. "The dress is perfect," Rachel said firmly, shooting Margaret a look that clearly said back off. Margaret simply smiled, that practiced society smile that never quite reached her eyes. At 45, she looked barely 30 thanks to expensive treatments and regular visits to her plastic surgeon. Her dress, for my wedding, was a designer piece that seemed more appropriate for a red carpet than a mother of the groom. "Daniel's ready," she announced, though he seems a bit nervous, perhaps having second thoughts. She laughed as if she made a joke, but the implication was clear. "Daniel's fine," I said calmly. "We talked this morning." "Oh, he called you? That's concerning. Isn't it bad luck?" "Actually, I called him," I smiled. "Some traditions are meant to be broken." She pressed her lips together disapprovingly but said nothing more. After a few more minutes of awkward small talk, she finally left to take her seat for the ceremony. "I still can't believe she's only 45, Rachel muttered. "She must have been really young when she had Daniel." 19, I confirmed. She never lets anyone forget how she sacrificed her youth to be a mother. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Daniel's face when he saw me walking down the aisle made every moment of planning worth it. His eyes filled with tears as he took my hands in his, and the love shining in them washed away any lingering anxiety about his mother's behavior. We exchanged our vows, traditional with a few personal touches we'd written ourselves. Daniel promised to always be my safe harbor, my best friend, my partner in all things. I promised to stand by him through every storm, to face life's challenges together, to love him unconditionally. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." The kiss was perfect, the applause enthusiastic. Even Margaret seemed genuinely moved, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. The reception began smoothly. The garden setting was magical as sunset approached, twinkling lights coming on in the trees. Daniel and I shared our first dance to At Last by Etta James, and I felt like I was floating on air. Then came time for the speeches. My father went first, telling sweet stories about my childhood and welcoming Daniel to the family. Rachel followed with a touching tribute to our friendship and her belief in our love. Daniel's best man shared funny anecdotes about their college days. Finally, Margaret stood up, champagne glass in hand. I felt Daniel tense slightly beside me. When Daniel was born, she began, "I was just a girl myself. 19 years old, terrified, but determined to give my son the best life possible. I sacrificed everything for him, my education, my dreams, my youth." Standard Margaret, making everything about her. I squeezed Daniel's hand reassuringly. "And now here he is, married to Sophie." The pause before my name was subtle but noticeable. "Starting his own family, which makes this the perfect moment to share some wonderful news." She paused dramatically, looking around the room. "In 6 months, Daniel will have a new brother or sister. Yes, everyone, I'm pregnant." The glass I was holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on the table. The room erupted in confused murmurs and awkward congratulations. Daniel's face had gone completely white. "Isn't it wonderful?" Margaret continued, beaming. "Of course, this means we'll need Daniel's help even more now. James and I will be so busy with the new baby, we'll need someone to help manage the family business. Daniel, darling, you'll have to reconsider that job offer in Seattle." The job offer. The one Daniel had accepted 2 weeks ago that would let us start fresh in a new city, away from his mother's constant interference. The one we hadn't told her about yet. Mom, Daniel started, his voice strained. This isn't the time. Nonsense. Family is everything. Sophie understands that, don't you, dear? You wouldn't want to take Daniel away from his family just when we need him most, especially with a new baby coming. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. The room fell silent. Excuse me, I managed, before fleeing to the bridal suite. Rachel found me there 10 minutes later, sitting on the floor in my wedding dress, trying not to cry and ruin my makeup. She's still out there, Rachel reported, accepting congratulations and telling everyone how Daniel will need to stay close to home now. She's already talking about converting his old room into a nursery. She planned this, I said numbly. She waited until the wedding to announce it, to manipulate Daniel into staying. To ruin our plans for Seattle. That's not all, Rachel hesitated. I overheard her talking to her friend Susan. She said something about this pregnancy being just in time and how she had to do something when she heard about Seattle. A horrible suspicion began forming in my mind. Rachel, how old is James, Margaret's husband? 65, I think. They got married 2 years ago after meeting at some charity event. 65. And Margaret was 45. A pregnancy at that age, with a man that old, announced at exactly the right moment to disrupt our plans. I need you to do something for me, I said. Together. I echoed. Now, let's start planning how to take down your mother. The next 3 months were an exercise in patience and careful planning. Margaret was in her element, playing the role of glowing mother-to-be with theatrical perfection. Every family dinner became a performance, with her detailing her symptoms and making increasingly unreasonable demands on Daniel's time. The morning sickness is just terrible, she complained one evening, delicately picking at her food. But that's normal at 4 months, isn't it, Sophie? Being a doctor, you must know all about this. I nodded pleasantly, noting how she'd eaten a full lunch just hours earlier when she thought no one was watching. Absolutely, though usually by the 4th month we'd expect to see some visible changes. You're carrying so small. Her hand instinctively went to the slight padding she added to her midsection. Oh well, you know what they say about every pregnancy being different. Meanwhile, Rachel had been worth her weight in gold. As my maid of honor and a paralegal at one of the city's top law firms, she had resources and skills that proved invaluable. Got it, she announced one afternoon, dropping a thick folder on my kitchen table. Records from every fertility clinic in the tri-state area. Margaret hasn't been to any of them. What about her regular doctor? Daniel asked. He'd fully committed to uncovering the truth, his initial shock turning to anger as he watched his mother's manipulation unfold. That's where it gets interesting, Rachel grinned. She switched doctors 3 months ago. Her new OB/GYN. Turns out he lost his license in 2 other states for falsifying medical records. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, he's the only one who's confirmed her pregnancy. Bingo. And here's the best part, she's been paying him in cash. Big payments way above normal consultation fees. Daniel's jaw tightened. She's buying medical documentation. It gets better, Rachel continued. Remember Susan, her friend from the wedding? She works at a high-end boutique that specializes in prosthetic pregnancy bellies for movie productions. Guess who's been shopping there? We were building our case methodically, gathering evidence from every angle. James, Margaret's husband, had no idea. She convinced him they needed to keep the pregnancy quiet due to her age, so he attended none of her doctor appointments. The real challenge was keeping our investigation hidden while appearing to play into Margaret's plans. Daniel took a temporary position at his father's company, making Margaret believe her scheme was working. I delayed my Seattle contract, citing family obligations. Just until the baby comes, Margaret said smugly during one of her many impromptu visits to our house. Family has to come first, doesn't it? 2 months later, she announced she was having a boy. A little brother for Daniel. She exclaimed at yet another family dinner. We're going to name him James Jr. That same week, we hit the jackpot. Margaret's housekeeper, fed up with her increasingly demanding behavior, came to us with a bombshell. She's been taking hormone pills, Mrs. Chen confided, handing over an unmarked prescription bottle she'd found while cleaning. and I've seen her adjusting some kind of fake stomach in her bathroom. She made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, but she hesitated. What she's doing to your family, it's not right. The final piece fell into place when Margaret announced she wanted to celebrate her and James's second wedding anniversary, conveniently timed for when she would be 7 months pregnant. "We'll have it at the country club," she declared. "Everyone who was at Sophie and Daniel's wedding should be there. It's important to celebrate family milestones." Perfect. The day of the anniversary party dawned bright and clear. Margaret had outdone herself, transforming the country club's main hall into a combination anniversary/baby shower celebration. Blue balloons and silver anniversary decorations competed for space, while a professional photographer captured every moment. She was wearing a designer maternity dress that probably cost more than my car, her prosthetic belly perfectly styled to look 7 months along. James beamed proudly beside her, completely taken in by her performance. I waited until everyone had arrived, until Margaret was in full empress mode, holding court among the guests. Then I nodded to Rachel, who dimmed the lights for the anniversary video presentation. The screen lit up with Margaret's face, not from the party, but from security footage at the boutique where she'd bought her fake pregnancy belly. The timestamp was clear, 2 days before my wedding. The full deluxe package, her voice rang out clearly. I needed to be absolutely convincing. My son's getting married, and I have to announce my pregnancy at the reception. The room went dead silent. The video continued, showing multiple visits, Margaret discussing sizes and timing with the boutique staff. Then it cut to footage from her new doctor's office, captured by his own security system after we reported him to the medical board. "Just write up the standard documentation," Margaret was saying, counting out cash. "Blood tests, ultrasounds, all of it. Make it ironclad." Gasps filled the room. James stood up abruptly, his face ashen. "Margaret, what is this?" The screen split to show more damning evidence. Receipts for hormone pills, the housekeeper's sworn statement, close-up photos of the prosthetic belly's manufacturing labels. Finally, my favorite, surveillance video from the country club's parking lot just an hour earlier, showing Margaret arriving early, slipping into the bathroom with a flat stomach, and emerging with her perfect 7-month bump. "Turn it off," Margaret commanded, her voice shaking. "This is ridiculous. Obviously doctored footage. Like your pregnancy documentation," I asked sweetly, standing up. "Or should we discuss the fact that your OB/GYN just had his license revoked in this state too, for falsifying pregnancy records?" The photographer was still snapping pictures, capturing every moment of Margaret's unraveling. Her face had gone from red to white to almost gray. "Daniel," she pleaded, turning to her son. "You don't believe these lies, do you? Your own mother." "Stop." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop, Mom. We have the prosthetic belly manufacturer's records, the hormone prescriptions, statements from the boutique staff. It's over." James walked slowly to stand in front of his wife. 7 months, he said slowly. "You've been lying to me for 7 months, making me believe, making everyone believe." "James, darling, I can explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted, my voice carrying through the stunned room. "How you tried to manipulate your son into giving up his dreams. How you were willing to deceive your husband, fake a pregnancy, just to maintain control. You don't understand." Margaret's composure finally cracked. "He was leaving. Seattle was too far away. I needed him here, with family. I had to do something. So you ruined our wedding," I stated flatly, lied to everyone. Spent thousands on fake bellies and corrupt doctors. Created a whole fictional baby. "I did it for Daniel." "No." Daniel stepped forward, shaking his head. "You did it for yourself. Always for yourself. Just like every manipulation, every guilt trip, every scheme throughout my entire life. But it's over now, Mom. We're done." Margaret looked around wildly, seeing nothing but shocked and disgusted faces. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she knew it. "James," she tried one last time. "Please." But James was already walking away, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer," he announced to the room. "I suggest everyone save copies of that video. We may need it for the divorce proceedings." The aftermath was both painful and liberating. The story spread through our social circle like wildfire. Margaret's fake pregnancy, her elaborate deception, her public unmasking. James filed for divorce the next day, citing fraud and emotional manipulation. Daniel's father, finally seeing his ex-wife's true nature, insisted we take the Seattle position. Go, he said, hugging his son. Build your own life, away from her influence. I'll handle the business here. We moved 3 weeks later. The Children's Hospital welcomed me with open arms, and Daniel's software company proved even more exciting than he'd hoped. We bought a house near the water, adopted a dog, and started planning for a real baby of our own. Margaret's attempts to contact us became increasingly desperate as her world imploded. The divorce left her with far less than she'd hoped. James's lawyers used the pregnancy deception to invalidate much of their prenuptial agreement. Her social standing, built on decades of careful manipulation, evaporated overnight. Her last message came 6 months after we'd moved. I've only wanted what was best for the family. Someday you'll understand. Daniel deleted it without responding. 1 year to the day after the anniversary party exposure, we hosted a different kind of celebration, a housewarming party in our Seattle home. Rachel flew out for it, bringing a special gift, a framed photo from our wedding, taken just before Margaret's announcement. Look at your faces, she said softly. So happy, so in love. She tried to destroy that, but she failed. I looked around our new home, at the friends we'd made, at Daniel laughing with colleagues by the grill. In the end, Margaret's schemes had given us an unexpected gift, the strength to break free, to build our own life, to define family on our own terms. Actually, I smiled, resting a hand on my stomach, my genuinely 4 months pregnant stomach. I think we won something more. We learned how not to parent. Our child will never know manipulation disguised as love, control masked as concern. Daniel joined us, wrapping an arm around my waist. Our child will know real family, he agreed. The kind that supports dreams instead of stifling them. That celebrates truth instead of lies. Rachel raised her glass. To real family. To real family, we echoed. Later that night, as Daniel and I sat on our deck watching the sunset over Puget Sound, I thought about the long road that had led us here. About a wedding day that had seemed ruined but had actually set us free. About a mother's schemes that had ultimately given her son the strength to break away. Any regrets? I asked Daniel. He pulled me closer, his hand resting protectively over our growing baby. Just one, he smiled. I wish we'd exposed her sooner. I laughed, thinking of the video that had ended Margaret's reign of manipulation. Well, our child's future grandmother did teach us one valuable lesson. Oh, the truth always comes out, usually in the most dramatic way possible. We laughed together, the sound carrying out over the water. Somewhere in the city, our real family was waiting. Friends who had become siblings, colleagues who had become confidants, neighbors who had become trusted allies. And growing beneath my heart, a new life who would know only genuine love, honest relationships, and the freedom to become exactly who they were meant to be. Margaret had tried to script our lives according to her vision. Instead, she had inadvertently given us the push we needed to write our own story. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as catastrophes. Sometimes what seems like an ending is really a beginning in disguise. And sometimes the family you choose is infinitely stronger than the family you're born into.